You're listening to Squatch Talks Podcast. Real stories and real encounters told by real researchers. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'm Eric Spinner.
And I'm Nathan Moyer.
We're just a few friends talking about all things Sasquatch. Squatch Talks. And we're going to have some exciting stories and encounters to share with you. Going to have also our co-host Brian Spinner joining us in a little while. Going to talk a little bit about what got him into the topic. Back around 2006, I started doing some armchair research on the computer and came across the BFRO's website. That's bfro.net. And I was checking out the database and the sightings reports from New Jersey. New Jersey. You believe it, Nathan? I mean,
exactly. They're everywhere.
Blew me away. So, by day, I'm a nutritional consultant and business owner, and by later in the day, I research Bigfoot. In 2008 was when I first recorded wood knocks at a area that I was researching. And it was kind of an interesting day. I was just out there by myself with my walking staff, and I climbed up on this hillside overlooking the cranberry bogs. And I found a piece of dam, and I just went with my staff, boom, 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 and held up my recorder, my digital recorder up in the air, and I got 5 response knocks. And I was excited, let me tell you. So,
oh yeah, I bet.
What do? I go right down the hill into this meadow, walking towards the sound of the knocks, into the forest, down this game trail, right? Thinking it was about a half mile away, judging by the sound of it. I later find out, talking to somebody who had more experience, that if the digital recorder I was using at the time picked it up, it was probably more like 300 to 500 yards away. So in my travels, I probably passed by whatever made the knocks, right?
Yeah, well, how's that make you sleep?
Yeah, well, at the time, I was pretty encouraged, actually. But I came on another game trail, went to the left, and I came out on a main trail, right, which kind of led deeper into the forest. And as I'm walking down the trail, I'm looking around, and up ahead, I see this, what looks to be an arm and like a shoulder and an arm, like an auburn-colored individual peeking out from a tree, right? And I stop, and I tell you, my heart started getting the racing, and I'm looking like this, seeing what it is, but I was too far away, so I headed towards it. And when I got close enough, I was able to finally see that it was just a dead pine, tree branch, and the needles resembled a hairy arm. But
oh yeah, the way it was hanging down there, yeah.
Exactly. It was just kind of, coming out from the side of the tree. But like I said, as you just mentioned, we eliminate all variables, and we do our research scientifically. Hey, right. I've taken up some time. Why don't you tell us a little bit what, did it for you, Nathan? What spurred your interest in the topic?
I'm an electrician for a school district. I've been there for 16 years. I've been an electrician all my life. And that's what pays the bills so I can go out and go camping and look for the forest giants, because it turns into a passion. It turns into the only thing you want to do. And I'm just lucky enough to have a job where I can take time off. I just loved everything that scares me, really. I never watched any of the older movies. In Search Of was the only thing that got me into it, was Leonard Nimoy and the Mystery Club in my junior high school. I think it was 7th and 8th grade. We had a mystery club. So that's where I first got my taste of anything cryptid or anything paranormal at all. We talked about ghosts, Loch Ness, Bigfoot, anything, UFOs. So I always had a little bit of an interest. But it wasn't until my daughter, Tira, was watching the Finding Bigfoot TV show that she wanted to go on an expedition. So I think that was in 2012, I believe. And the rest is history. I couldn't stop. Every time you go into the woods now, you're looking for Bigfoot. Everything you do is now Bigfoot. The BFRO had to become a member, had to become an investigator, had to become an organizer. you could try to get up there with the guys like you, Brian, Russ Jones, and Charles Kimbrough and those guys.
Right.
There's so much information. And like you said, on your first expedition, you get all that information. There's so many different things. And that's one of the great things about the expeditions we do. All the information we give the people. And so that really was my first introduction into squatching, is going with Tira into that first expedition in Ohio.
Having the ability to go on expeditions with you and go camping, it's just been such a blessing. So glad that we've gotten the chance to get out there together and do this research, and your family, my family, and vice versa.
It really does become a family.
Hey, and speaking of family, I see my brother Brian Spinner. My brother,
how you doing, brother?
I should say, because we're not
right.
Get into the details later, but Brian's going to be joining the call, and let me admit him into our conference here, and we'll let him talk a little bit about what got him into this topic.
How you doing, Eric? Eric and Nate, it's great to be here, guys. I'm so happy thank you. I'm so happy to be a part of this Squatch Talks podcast, and I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've worked in healthcare for about 20 years. Currently, I'm searching for a new avenue in life. I've gotten out of healthcare and got some feelers out for some new projects, and trying to be, get something going. Being my own boss. So,
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. So, let me tell you a little bit about my first experience. I was on an expedition, in BFR expedition in 2009. Nicholas Mayone was the expedition leader, and we were up in Lake George, and another investigator, Mike Aragona, had brought a thermal camera, and we were out on night ops. I believe it was the second night. Mike had caught something in the thermal, and we all had the chance to view what he was seeing. We passed around the thermal, and what we saw was basically the shape of what almost looked like the outline of a gorilla that was kind of stationary. And at times it was moving. It was kind of going back and forth, doing a little swaying, and at times it moved out of sight. We viewed this thing for approximately 45 minutes.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 45 minutes. It just kind of stood there watching us watch it. It had to be probably, I guess, about maybe 70 to 80 yards away. And again, it was night, and it was a monocular, and it was really, hard to make out any distinct features or anything like that. But it was definitely interesting. It kept us all on our toes, and me and some other people honestly thought that we were viewing a Sasquatch. I've gone camping in this area and have had things thrown at our tent. We've heard vocalizations. So this is really, something that an event that really kickstarted my career as an investigator.
So Brian, that's pretty much what got you into this whole thing, right? And you and I have similar yet different experiences as to what got us into the topic, of course. But I just want to clarify for the listeners that Brian and I both share the last name, but we're not related by blood, right?
No.
And
no
how
blood.
Crazy is it that two guys named Spinner are both part of the same Bigfoot researchers organization, and now NASBRO, right? And we're both investigators, organizers, right? And how crazy is that we came together through this, similar interest to look for Bigfoot together. And now, I mean, from, getting together through this process, we become like brothers. I think of you and
most
Nathan
definitely
as my brothers from another mother,
So, most definitely. It goes way beyond Squatchin.
We have such a great time, getting together. And we talked about also how when we do our expeditions in the future, we're going to do them together.
I don't want you to be too alarmed, Brian, but I believe there's a cryptid crawling around behind you.
Named Max. And that's funny that you mentioned that, Nathan, because I had a dog named Max also.
Oh my God, you didn't.
I swear. My Jack Russell terrorist, Max. No lie.
See that?
This is getting weirder. There might be some paranormal stuff going on, actually. So
Paranormal parallels.
That's right.
exactly, which
Yeah.
another thing we can get into because we've had some weird experiences on our expeditions that could border on the realm of paranormal activity.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
speaking,
not just expeditions, but our own individual things that have happened to us out in the field,
oh sure,
as well.
Some of the stuff we're finding is strange, to say the least.
Yeah,
absolutely.
some of the stuff really doesn't have any means to an end. Let's just say when it comes to
Right.
research. Yeah, but that's where it all started for me. Watching those
Mhm.
movies as a kid and those the TV shows In Search of and all that.
Sure.
It definitely sparked my interest. I think back then we had book fairs, right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
And every book fair, I was always searching for the mysterious and the paranormal and Bigfoot. Anything that I could find along those lines, and I was so psyched.
Yeah, when you weren't, of course, in the mystery club with Nathan,
That's
but
right.
Oh yes.
eating Scooby snacks and
Yeah.
Hey, the mystery club was where it was at, man. I'm telling you.
hey, we didn't have we didn't have the mystery club in New York. And Brian and I are both from New York originally, even though I'm in New Jersey now, and Nathan's in PA. In case the listeners weren't sure, that's why we're doing this episode remotely. Again, little teasers. This is our premiere podcast, so we're just kind of getting to know one another as far as the listeners are concerned. That's why we're actually showing our faces in this episode. In the future, podcasting, of course, you're just listening, so we'll just have some footage maybe of my travels at night through the GoPro or some drone footage or whatever. But for this time especially, we're going to do it this way just to give you all an idea of who we are and what makes us tick. Hey, I don't talk badly about anybody. I love other shows that talk about, encounters and they have guests on and whatever else, but we are real researchers telling real stories and real encounters. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you guys are able to join me on this quest, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys all listening, and Nathan and Brian, my brothers from another mother. Let's end it there for our first premiere. Thanks. Welcome back to Squatch Talks podcast. I'm Eric Spinner.
I'm Nathan Moyer.
And I'm Brian Spinner.
And tonight we're going to discuss some of the experiences we've had out in the field. And we're each going to just tell one story and give you an idea of some of the things that have happened to us over the years. So we're going to start off tonight's podcast with Nathan Moyer from Pennsylvania. Nate, take it away.
How you doing, everybody? Well, the story I want to tell tonight was probably my first solo Sasquatch event. And as far as solo, I mean that I was sort of the one that was running the show. I had two friends with me that night. And of course, Tiru was with me. We were camping up at Ricketts Glen, and beautiful place to go. Recommended highly. All of the 22 named waterfalls and stuff. It's just a gorgeous place to go. My first BFRO report that I investigated was up at Ricketts Glen on Lake Jean. So we were up there that day. We met with the witnesses and everything. It was two old guys on a boat, and they were fishing. Went over to the side, and he said this tree just started shaking violently. This guy was probably, I think he was 75 at the time. So there was like no reason he was shaken. This was a couple years ago at that point. And he said that tree was shaking so bad, and the only thing he could see was like the half the thigh, the knee, and down the leg, or the calf, down to the foot sticking out from behind a tree. But he said that thing would shake. He wanted to go over further, and the guy that was on the boat with him, he said, "No, we're going the other way." And he said he was smarter at the time because he was older. He was 80-some. So the night that I was talking about, we went around the back of that area and came down from the other side. Instead of trying to go across the lake, like I said, we were going down to where the runoff for the lake, for Lake Jean, runs down the back. That's where we were trying to go, right? So we get to this spot, and the water, because it had rained 2 nights before that, it rained, and the water was just coming off Lake Jean like crazy. So we couldn't cross. Noisy as can be, all kinds of, the water rushing so we stand there for about half an hour looking around, trying to decide what we wanted to do and if we wanted to cross, which wasn't going to happen. So as we turn around and we're walking back, Tira had seen a rectangular white light out in the distance and didn't think a whole lot of it, other than we thought, well, maybe somebody's coming this way with car, headlights, whatever. Which you have to remember now that when Tira sees a white light, and I didn't know it at the time, but ever since that instance, whenever she sees a rectangular white light, we're in for a good time, because for some reason she always sees that. That probably happened 6 or 8 times. But anyway, we start turning around and everybody's fanned apart. Dan and Ian, me and Tira, we're in a line going across a dirt road. So one car width is 12 feet maybe, with how much is mowed on the sides of a dirt road usually. And we're walking, we get maybe 20 yards from where we were standing, and we were doing calls and whoops and stuff. And when we walked a little bit further, we heard this, I don't know, we heard a pop, and then this tree came crashing in our direction. It was loud as could be. As soon as it hit the ground, the 4 of us could have fit inside of a hula hoop, I think. We were so close to each other. We were standing there, and now this noise, this crashing, whatever knocked that over, is between us and the truck. We can see the truck with our red lights on. We could see the reflectors blinking in the distance. And I looked at Dan and I said, well, we might as well just go for it now. So we just started walking, and we walked in this little circle. It was ridiculous. We got to the truck. Everybody calmed down a little bit, and we go walking back. And I think we picked up some knocks. Not sure. That part, we were walking over the audio terrible at that point. And I did send our audio to Monongahela from East Coast Expeditions, and he cleaned it up and was looking through the whole thing. And he said right before the pop that we heard, before all the crashing and all the branches snapping, he said there is a growl, a guttural growl, that once he got rid of all the noise from the creek and all the other stuff, it was loud. I still have it. I just got to find it. But it was the first time I was ever growled at, which I didn't know at the time. And that was my first tree getting pushed over.
Nice.
It was pretty incredible. And it was on a whim, going out. I never really went out by myself before, as far as an area that I decided to go that late at night. It was probably 2 a.m. at that point.
And that was about 8 years ago?
Oh, at least 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more than that.
Right.
You said that it was your first tree that you had pushed over. Have you had other trees pushed over as well?
Yeah, 3 total. Two trees pushed over like that it could have been a growl on the audio. The first one definitely was a growl. The second one we think was. The third one from Kentucky, that was insane. It ripped a perfectly healthy tree. I bet you it was a maple tree. It was probably 4 inches across. The branch had snapped down, and it landed on the ground with a thud. and it rushed the edge of the tree line, and it sounded like there was 500 of them coming. It just, I don't know if it was knocking the leaves up or what it was doing, but that was an incredible bluff charge. That was probably the most scared I ever was. We just stood there, all four of us. We just stood there, and then you could hear it running down the side, and then it stopped. We started walking the same direction back the way we wanted to go, and it just paced us all the way back to the church.
Paralleled you, huh?
Yeah, all the way. That was
Wow.
But getting back to this first incident, when you were at Ricketts Glen,
yeah.
How long were you there after this tree got pushed over? You said you guys went back to the truck.
We went back
kind of
down.
regrouped.
Yeah, we went back down. We started looking for the tree. Found the tree. It was still alive. You know.
Wow.
It wasn't. I always say tree pushed over. Both those instances, it was broken up maybe 8-10 feet and like pulled down. So like it was snapped up that high.
Interesting. You remember where we were in New Jersey a couple of months ago, Nathan and Brian? Yeah. And we had that tree pushed over there. That also was broken off about 8 feet off the ground, if you recall.
Yeah.
And it was a fat tree. I wonder if they actually like climb up and then like lean back or something. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of tough just to push over a tree at that height and cause it to break.
I always picture them like coming off of another tree and like pulling it from the top all the way down to the ground, and that's where it snaps. You know, I don't know. It's just something I picture in my head. It's probably not even close, but they probably just the thing and snap it.
I'm wondering if it's like the juveniles, climbing up the tree and doing like that, where they lean over and they bend it over, and that's where we get these arches and different tree structures from as well.
The ones that don't break, they pin down then.
Yeah. As a sign maybe of, territorial or whatever it might be, or just an indication of maybe food source or water source. I don't know. We're still learning about all these things. So there's a lot of theories, of course.
Well, that goes to the Native Americans did that. That if they had a decent trail and they would find a water source, they would start manipulating saplings into different shapes. Bend it into different shapes that meant different things. And that's why you have trees that'll go up maybe 4 foot and go across maybe 3 foot and then go straight up, because they manipulate them as saplings to do that.
As directional markers.
Right.
Yeah.
And you never know. They learned it from that.
Are Sasquatch intelligent enough to know to do those types of things? We don't know. Right. But I do feel they have a higher intelligence than just an ape or a chimpanzee, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. That's a great tale.
The correlation between the two is something else too that you can't ignore. The fact that we find these tree manipulations done by the Sasquatch, and Native Americans used to do the exact same thing. So I just think it's pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which came first? Did the Native Americans learn it from the Sasquatch and observing what they've done in nature and then adapted to that? Right. I think that's a good question as well.
Sure is. And it's possible they learn from one another. I mean, the Sasquatch having the skills to survive without any structures or fire or really any kind of weapon. It's possible that they gain certain skills from watching early humans in their quest to survive. All right, I'm gonna send it over to Brian, and he's gonna tell us one of his first encounters out in the forest.
Well, Eric and Nate, I had a crazy experience. I had an experience where I had rocks and other small objects thrown in my direction. So the backdrop to the story was, this area of research that I have. There's numerous stories coming out of here. Multiple Class A road cross sightings, bipedal footfalls. This is a lake that I grew up walking around. Many a lot of time spent in this area, right? Before I even knew of any reports or anything. So I had some friends that were hiking in the daytime, and they had come across an area that produced a really wicked odor. It smelled like decomposing flesh and, wet animal and swamp mud all mixed together.
Nice.
Okay. Yes. So as they're hiking, this smell kind of follows them a little bit and then dissipates. But what they noticed next is that they were being paralleled in the woods. What seemingly from all angles, from the right, left, and from the rear. They were walking, and they noticed as if they stopped, the sound would stop, like right after. So they felt like they were being stalked, basically. So they were kind of walking fast. And at one point, they stopped so that one of my friends could tie his shoe. And as he did that, he heard a rock hit the tree right next to him and fall to the ground. He looked in the direction of where he thought it had come from, and he said he saw what he thought was a large gray gorilla briefly. And he kind of saw it, and then he looked over to his sister and he said, did you see that? Hey, look over here. And when he looked back, he could not see it any longer. At that point, he was pretty freaked out, made her freaked out a bit, and they hightailed it off this trail and left. So they came home and they told me about this. And at the time, I had been a researcher for a couple years with the BFRO, and I was really excited. These are all telltale signs, the smell, the stalking behavior, the throwing of objects, and then an actual Class A of something briefly in an area where there has been so much reported activity that I will get into in future podcasts as well. So basically what happened was at that point, we went back there at 1:00 in the morning, and all three of us, and we walked into the woods, into the beginning part of this trail, and we hiked for a little bit. On the way in, we were hearing some movement. Wasn't sure really, couldn't really tell what it was. And we got to a certain point on the trail and we just stopped. And we were looking around and, just observing in the dark. And I did have a night vision monocular with me. And I went to use it and I couldn't get it to work. I was so excited.
Right?
I'm looking at it. I didn't want to mess with it, at the time, and
take the lens cap off.
Take out of the take away from the experience, But as it turns out, that's funny because it turned out to be that there was a cap on the lens that I just didn't detect at the time. So, yeah.
Common mistake. We've all done it. We've all done it. Come on.
Yes.
That's the Squatch curse.
It is the Squatch curse. So at that point, you asked me how my friends, reacted. They were scared. They wanted to get out of there, and I told them, hey, this is why we're here.
Exactly.
Right.
You signed up for this, and here we are. And this is something's happening to us, Let's try to experience it,
Right.
And the fear did not subside on their end. I took a moment and I tried to do some small, monkey-like vocalizations in the direction of where I felt it was. And another thing I wanted to say is that we had flashlights, but I didn't want to shine my light on it. I probably could have had a Class A sighting right then and there, but I felt something inside me said, "Do not shine your light there." You know,
Right.
I felt like it was there. It was letting us know it was there, and it was letting us know that it didn't want us to be there. So any other provocation towards it, like a flashlight or anything like that, I felt could have, you know, I don't, it may have either put us in danger or it may have, you
Sure.
know, made it so that I wouldn't be welcome at all in that territory, or that, they
Sure.
might move on. You never want to, as my research areas, I'm always respectful
Hmm.
of, how I approach any situation,
So
you know.
basically, at that point, though, they were like escorting you out gently, right?
Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, we started walking out and it had actually escorted us out. It paralleled us on the right-hand side. It walked through the brush. We could hear it walking, and it stopped in a clearing where there was power lines, and we could hear it. We could hear a commotion, just put it that way.
right.
And and we had left, and that was our experience.
Well,
So yeah,
we would call that a solid Class B intimidation encounter.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's good stuff.
You know.
yeah, definitely. So
Yeah, that's
I,
always fun. I got to tell you, when that type of stuff happens, and you're with people who aren't necessarily into doing this type of research, their first response is, "Okay, let's go."
Yeah.
And we're like, "No, this is why we're here."
exactly, exactly, exactly. So
Let's see if we can get it to throw another rock at us.
Exactly. And it's funny. It's funny too, because like where you're talking about, I know where you're talking about. We're not disclosing any specific locations, of course, because we want to preserve our research areas. Okay. And we
Right.
want to respect the locals as well.
Right.
But on that same night where I recorded those howls, one of the teams, if you recall, had left earlier and had a rock thrown at them. Okay. As they were exiting the area.
Right.
So when two of the members on my team wanted to leave earlier, they were going to walk down a trail back to a different parking area. And if you recall, the remaining participants on my team and I wanted to walk back down the other trail because I wanted to get a rock thrown at me.
Yeah, this is what we go looking for.
Mhm.
Though as far as I know, there's not too many people that have had experiences. I've heard a couple where people actually get hit by the objects.
Yeah.
I've heard of one where a guy got hit in the head and it got knocked down.
Yeah.
By a good sized rock.
He probably flashed his flashlight at the guy, That's
Yeah.
I got hit right here in British Columbia by a little pebble. And I was just sitting there in my camp chair like this, and the rest of the attendees were looking at somebody's laptop at their orb pictures. Okay. And I got hit and it landed right in between my leg and the camp chair. And I looked up and I said, "Did somebody throw a rock at me?" And they all looked over and said, "No." And again, it didn't just fall out of the tree. It came from the hillside in front of me,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, those are
Wow.
great times. Good times, we say.
Yeah. Yes.
But I still have my rock. Okay. It's in my office in my desk.
Yeah. Yep. Those you want to keep, definitely. Yeah. So I don't know, like I said, where mine went, but
That's cool. You know what? Hey, these are the kind of things that we're going to talk about, and hopefully people enjoy hearing our stories and they get something out of it too. And then maybe it'll spur them to want to go out and do some of this research on their own in their areas,
Yeah.
And that's what we do when we take people out on expeditions. We're out there to teach them how we go about doing this. And, often they have these types of experiences themselves. And that really gives them the Bigfoot bug, as we call it,
Yeah. Yep. Throughout the years of my research, I've accumulated probably 40 to 50 stories from my area and surrounding areas of research, all within one county. And there have been 4 road crossing Class A sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature crossing the road in front of motorists.
Including this past
Uh,
year.
and this past year, yes, there was another instance where I myself drove up on a motorist who was parked on the side of the road at 11 o'clock at night. And I pulled up at the stop sign. I was going to make a right, and she went to say something to me through the window, and I stopped the car and I backed up because I didn't hear what she said. And then she said it again as I peeked my head out the window. And what she said to me was, I just saw a Sasquatch. And my jaw dropped because, you know, here I am, pretty much one of the only people in my area that, you know, have been so involved with, you know, investigating Bigfoot reports and stuff. Drive up on a motorist who, you know, basically just told me that they had a Class A sighting. And this was this is on the road, the same road where, you know, these other motorists, you know, have reported seeing one cross the road as well. So,
and instead of saying, "Hey, I'm Brian, I'm with the BFRO, can I speak to you about this?" he decides just to pull up alongside or behind her, and she's like, she tears out like a bat out of hell because she's like,
I didn't know what
guy?
to do at the time. Exactly. Exactly. I went to pull my truck. Yes. I went to pull my truck over to her so that I could talk to her. And I guess she just got freaked out and took off.
Well, poor woman just had a road crossing, and then she sees this big guy in a truck, like, you know, coming up behind her. I'd probably tear out too.
Exactly. So, yeah, that was pretty exciting.
And not to give anything away, but you know, I've been to this location with you, and we had an expedition. I guess it was about a year or so ago, and that happens to be a location where I recorded some pretty amazing howls.
Yes, most definitely.
So that's a tale for another time, of course.
Yeah. Yep. Lots of tales coming out of this area. So
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Got some good luck.
Yeah, definitely. And at this point, you know, I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Eric. You know, let's hear about one of your stories here.
I had chosen a encounter that I had on my first expedition in Pennsylvania. Actually, that really piqued my interest in this whole thing. I was, of course, on BFRO in 2008 in northwestern PA, and we had been there a few days. The expedition actually was over, and Todd and I decided to spend an extra night at a location, at a campsite where the group who had been there on Friday night had a Class A thermal sighting. So we decided to spend another night, and we set up camp. We hiked through the forest roads for a couple of hours. No luck, but it was just really cool knowing that there was a Sasquatch standing right alongside this tree as we were walking past, you know. And so we get back to our campsite. I guess it's around 4:30 in the morning, and he's like, well, let's get into our tents and hope for the best. And as I'm getting in my tent, he radios me and says, I just heard a scream, come on back out. So I get back out. We walk up the road a little bit, and we therm the swamp that was to the right of our campsite. Didn't see anything, so we head back to the tents, and as I'm getting ready to go in, he says, hey, say a prayer and hope for the best. I'm laying there in my tent. I said a prayer, and not 5 minutes later, I could hear something coming over the berm, which separated our campsite from this forestry road where the gas lines were located on. And not only could I hear the footfalls approaching, but I could feel it as well. And this individual comes around my tent to where my head was, and it was just starting to get light out, and I could see a silhouette through my tent fabric, and it crouches down by my head and takes a deep breath in. It goes, and just then I could see the hand pushing in on the fabric right over my head. And I was holding my radio still from when Todd and I got in our tents, and I clicked the button 3 times because I didn't want to talk into the mic and scare the poor thing, you know?
Oh, yeah. Scare the poor thing.
The poor thing.
Meanwhile, my heart is pounding in my chest. Let me tell you, this is my first experience, right?
Yeah.
No response from Todd. And a moment or two later, I hear what sounds like a vehicle approaching, coming up this forestry road. And where we were was right on a 90-degree turn. And so just before, and it was still dark, mind you, but just before this vehicle would have rounded the bend and its headlights would have illuminated this individual, it tore off through the center of camp, over the fire ring and into the bushes and forest beyond the camp. And I could hear it crashing into brush. And it definitely sounded bipedal. It did not sound like a deer or a quadrupedal animal. Okay.
Right.
And I clicked my radio again 3 times, nothing, no response. Another couple of moments go by, and I think I hear what sounds like equipment starting up. So I thought, oh, it was a worker coming in to work on the gas lines, right? Turns out we investigated later on and discovered a switching station down the road. So it was probably just that kicking in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
After I heard that sound, though, I finally get a response from Todd on his radio. He says, "Hey, you all right over there?" I said, "Were you walking around outside my tent?" He goes, "No, I wasn't walking around outside your tent." So I tell him that, I had this creature come up on my tent. And I very soon afterwards passed out from the adrenaline rush. And he told me that about 5 minutes later, it came back into camp. And it came back through the center. And he heard it coming in. And he tried unzipping the tent flap of his tent, which was facing the swamp, right? And mine was facing the game trail to the left of our campsite. I had a digital recorder in the tent flap, but it was facing that direction. And he had his thermal imager on a monopad. And he tried to unzip the tent enough so he could get it out and record it coming through the campsite. But because of the dome of the tent, he couldn't get it up high enough to get over the dome. So he wasn't able to see it. He had a digital recorder on a camp table in the camp. And the next morning, all I remember is waking up and Todd's tent is completely down, packed up, ready to go. And I get out of my tent and he says, "Hey, go get your trail camera. I'll help you break down your tent." And basically that was it. We said our goodbyes and headed out. But both of us reviewed our audio from that night. Neither one of us had any sounds of the footfalls or even the individual leaving and crashing through the forest. I mean, it's like what do we call it? That Squatch curse,
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was pretty exciting for me. I went and got my camera and we said our goodbyes.
Quick question for you, Eric.
Yeah.
When it pressed on the tent, Eric, did you notice like individual fingers?
Yeah.
Could you tell it was like a hand?
A hand, and literally, like I said, I'm laying on my back and it's coming like over my head.
Okay. Right.
And then I don't know what, I guess that's when I heard the sound of the vehicle approaching. So it pulled its hand back and it stood up and tore off through camp, and you could hear boom, boom, boom into the brush.
That's amazing. Were you able to tell about how many digits there were pushing in on the tent fabric?
It looked like a hand. I wasn't counting them.
Okay. No, I'm just saying because
no, I get it. It's a great question, but no.
Yeah.
It's like a hand. I could see at least 4. You know what I mean?
At least 4. Right?
At least 4, right. Because I know that they were long too, and that's really the thing that got me. Is like, I couldn't believe that this thing actually was pressing in on the tent fabric. That just blew me away. And like I said, being from New York originally, I didn't do much camping, in Long Island, and so I was not accustomed to the forest at that point. And I got a real quick education.
Yeah. Well, there's other reports, and I've seen them on TV, especially I think they're finding Bigfoot. Remember, a couple of the witnesses reported the same type of encounter.
Even that movie Willow Creek, there's a section or a segment in there where him and his girlfriend are in their tent, and they're hearing things outside the tent. And every time I've seen that, it gives me PTSD from this experience. Okay.
Yeah.
And a future story that I'll tell. It happened on your expedition, Brian, in October of 2020 up in New York, where in the early morning hours, another creature came to visit my tent. And I'm listening to an episode of Dixie Cryptid in one ear about Dogman. And across the road from our base camp, I hear an owl hooting on the ridge, right? And I'm laying there on my cot, and my phone is on a cradle, and it's illuminating me, and the fire is still going on my right, and this creature comes in on my left from that forest that we had behind our tents.
Yep.
And if you recall, I pull out the earbud, and I'm like, I'll just pretend I'm sleeping. And of course, then the fire's illuminating me, and my phone's illuminating me. So I reached over and I just knocked the phone over, so it's no longer illuminating me. And I'm like, well, hey, you know what? If this is my time to go, at least I'm going to die doing something I love. And I rolled over and went to sleep.
Yeah.
That was an incredible expedition too. I can't wait till we tell those stories. Those are good stories there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of evidence from that, to present.
And
from that expedition.
That was the early morning after my team had been at the same location you talked about, where I recorded after doing Samurai Chatter. Yeah. I got that mournful response howls, like over a dozen from what sounded like a mournful female from across, the ridge from us. And
well, I believe on recording, I have, from where our tents were positioned, I believe I do have it recorded that something approaching our tent, and also something throwing something in the direction of our tents and actually hitting something at one point. So yeah, I'll have to review some audio and get it prepared for some upcoming podcasts.
I thought I had my digital recorder set up, of course, and it was leaning on my tent because, again, we got into our tents early in the morning, and for some reason it wasn't working. Again, the curse of the Sasquatch. My trail camera, both behind the tent and in front of the tent, didn't pick anything up. I mean, I don't get it. It just amazes me.
Yeah.
Those are some great stories, I think, to kick off the second podcast episode. And hopefully the viewers will find that interesting, and they'll stay tuned for more of our exciting stories told by real researchers, real encounters, and real stories from our episodes and encounters in the forest with Sasquatch. So let's wrap it up there. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, you guys take care.
Welcome back to Squatch Talks Podcast. I'm Eric Spinner.
And I'm Nathan Moyer.
And hey, you may notice there's only two of us tonight. Our co-host Brian was feeling a bit under the weather this evening, so he's gonna sit this one out, and we're gonna see what we can do, just the two of us, and hopefully you'll still find it entertaining, right, Nathan?
Yeah, I was really wound up. Wanted to record tonight, so thought it was a good night to do it.
Especially after the weekend we had. I mean, I don't know about you, but we got 8 inches of snow here, and my plow company never showed up. So I wound up having to do the whole driveway and the parking area and the ramp and everything with my snowblower. So yeah, I was definitely feeling the after effects, shall we say. So
we only got about 4 inches, but I don't get out of the truck, so I'm okay.
Well, that helps.
That's right.
Anyway, we were talking about the PGF film, right? But we first did a little bit of a recap of some of the exciting events leading up to that episode, and having the ability to spend time with you and Terry, and then going up and seeing Brian and Catherine,
right,
with my wife Heather. So we actually had a couple of good weeks back to back, and enjoyed getting out and doing some live, right? Recordings.
Yeah, it's always nice to be out in the field, that's for sure.
No doubt. We're going to have to continue to do that. I think the viewers and listeners will appreciate that. At least the viewers will.
Yeah.
It's not really podcast material, but hey, they can at least hear the fear in our voices when we get bluff charged,
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be fun. I can't wait to do that. Sit around a campfire and do one of these. That'll be great.
Oh yeah. I can't wait. I'm so ready for that, But
Mhm.
hey, how cool was that I finally figured out how to add the audio so we actually could hear the recording I took the week before up in New York of
Right.
whatever it was coming up on me and Brian on that trail. That
Mhm.
scared the crap out of me, literally. I haven't been scared like that in a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
I was shaking, literally, because, I was holding the therm. I'm like,
Mhm.
I look at Brian, he's like, I'm effing shaking.
Yeah. That's different than anything else I've ever encountered.
Crazy. And you yourself had a little experience at this particular location also, which kind of, not,
That I stick with what I said a little bit earlier. I don't think it's Bigfoot related. I think it's something completely different. Just because
expound on that a little. I mean, do you want to
I
share
mean,
that with people? I mean,
yeah, I think it's completely paranormal. I think it's an apparition of some sort, I think.
hmm.
Uh
You mentioned that there was some
it
Native Americans potentially slaughtered at this
Yeah,
particular
well,
location.
I don't know exactly where the location is.
Well, nearby, I'm saying.
It's the base of the Berkshires, is what I was told. But with what happened to me, it looked like a shadow stood up. So I don't see that was. I got nothing Bigfoot out of that. That was straight up just freak you out.
A shadow person, right? That we've seen on some of these,
Yeah.
television shows where they do
Right.
the caught on camera type stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was just completely weird.
Hmm. And we did have a couple of attendees, if you recall, on that expedition, who also had some activity in that sense, right?
Right.
One guy who, it's funny. This guy, can I say Tony?
Well, I think you should.
I should say Tony. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is now a couple of times where he's had, some things happen to him which are freaky. This was one of the first things, obviously. I mean, aside from his sister's Patty, having the what we think is a visual sighting of one on her first
Right.
expedition, right?
Yeah.
And
When
he
they
was
were
with
out
her.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So then he's sitting there with us. I wasn't at this particular thing that you guys had, and I think
Oh,
something grabbed his leg, right?
yeah. That was the second time we went down. The next
Uh-huh.
night, grabbed a
Yeah.
hold of him and put marks on his leg.
Wait a minute. I did go down the second night, didn't I? Wasn't I there with Karen? I forget.
You might have been, but there was when it happened, it was just the three of us.
Okay. I probably bailed at that point, but yeah. So he got grabbed, and it left marks on his leg.
Yeah.
And that's spooky. I don't care what anybody says. And then he was with me, of course, at your expedition on the night that we recorded those howls.
Yeah.
And he had some, what I consider, he asked, and he says, hey, he was sitting down after I saw that headlamp flash, not flash, it was just a headlamp right across the trail from me, about 8 feet off the ground. And, I swayed back and forth to see if it was like a plane coming or if it was a trail hiker, star.
Mm-hmm.
It just stayed consistent. So I'm looking at it, and then it just went straight down and went out. And I was blown away. I'd never seen anything like that before. Okay. I turned to Jeff and Tony and I said, hey, did you guys see anything? And they said, and I think Tony said, I saw a flash. And Jeff and I both realized we had like our stomachs all knotted up and twisted up. Right. So I'm not sure if they experienced something. I felt it. Okay. Maybe infrasound, what we call. And Tony said, hey, what was that thing you guys were talking about earlier? Getting zapped, is it?
Getting zapped. Yeah.
Yeah. And he described how he felt like there was two fingers pressing right here on his forehead between his eyes, to the point where he had to sit down. Okay.
Yeah. He said it felt like it was pushing him down into his chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big guy, tough guy.
He's bigger than me.
The whole thing with like I said, the white light and some of the disruptions that we had, it's just really some odd occurrences that we've been experiencing that has gotten me at least to say, and what would that be?
One reason I think we got to start talking about it, because I know other researchers, it happens to them and they don't want to talk about it, or they're going to pass it off as something else. But we have to figure out what's going on and either differentiate it between Bigfoot and paranormal, or say that something's going on, because more people than just us this is happening to,
Yeah, I liked what Brian kind of coined the phrase paranormal parallels.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. We got to start talking about it because it's happening around this stuff all the time, and it's important. The evidence is the evidence,
Exactly. But, I'm still not quite there with the whole orb thing. I do believe in orbs as far as we picture, we do pick them up on, especially digital photographs, right?
Right.
Or other means of film production, I'm sure too.
Mm-hmm.
In your case, when you gave us the options of where we would, be potentially going, and I heard Dead Woman's Hollow, I said, that's where my team's going. Anything with dead woman in it, says.
Just remember that. The leader let you pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I do that when I'm organizer.
I didn't take the best spot for myself. I shared.
Oh, hello. Wait a minute. At the game we're playing. How about on New Jersey in September, the one before yours?
Yeah.
Who had the activity? Mr. Nathan's team. Bravo.
Yes, we did.
Team Bravo had all the activity. And I'm sitting there, with my alpha team going, they're having a lot of fun over there, about a half mile away,
Yeah, that was pretty incredible.
And then Tony said, hey, I think we're seeing eyeshine heading in your direction. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. We're waiting for it. Nothing ever showed up.
It turned around and came back. The party was with us.
I think so. I think he did. And or they, I think in your case,
Yeah, there was definitely more than one.
But I was happy for you guys, That's the key.
Yeah.
I mean, you had some newbies with you on that occasion, right? Of course, I gave you the good luck charm, Patty and Tony, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can't go anywhere without her if you want something.
She was supposed to be on my team, but I said no.
That's you got to give it up for the attendees.
These are the sacrifices we make.
That's right. Yep.
Hey, you know what? It's happened to us there too. So I've had my share of experiences. That's why it's great when you are organizing an event like this, and the new people have some type of activity that's pretty, I would say.
I never worry about the stuff I can control. The food's going to be good. The company's going to be good. The programs are going to be good. I just pray that the activity's good.
Right. Well, hey. There's been times where, it hasn't been as active as I would have liked it to have been.
Right.
And, but we make up for it with our, instructional type stuff like you did with all your presentations, which were great. So, hey, you want to talk about a couple of stories? I don't know if you thought of anything, but you want to start us off?
I have a story kind of ties into last week when we were talking about the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
And why that sort of works out, because and I think the way most of us think, something that large is going to go the path of least resistance. It's going to make less noise, and people walking up and down that trail all day long, whatever. It's, a little more well groomed. So anyway, a friend of mine he wants to do section hikes of the Appalachian Trail, and he wanted to shake out his gear. So I said, I'll go with you. It's just going to do an overnight thing. Shouldn't be too bad. You shouldn't do that when you have a broken back. Carrying a backpack that far is not a good idea. But anyway, so we're hiking in. We started at like 7:00 in the morning, and we hiked from, I think it was from Wind Gap or Water Gap to Wind Gap, or the other way around. I can't quite remember the exact. It's on here. I have it marked.
Okay.
I have it marked on my map back here, though.
Pretty cool, I gotta say. If anybody else noticed how cool that looks, but he's got his map of PA behind him and the Appalachian Trail on the side. So,
and I've got pins, and then everywhere that I've researched and what happened, and like Brian said, it's old school, but you know what? It's fun to look at too.
we are old schools.
Yeah. When you can see the cluster on the map, it's just better than looking at it on your phone, But
I agree.
The trail we did, I think, was 12 miles. So we were 6 miles up well, right around 6 or 8 miles, I think, when we quit for the night. And it, of course, was raining, which was just wonderful. So we're hiking about halfway up through when it started raining, putting all the rain gear on, covering up my backpack. We're hiking along, and coming up to this, my buddy was doing all kinds of training, and you could tell I was slowing him down. He'd get like out of sight, then he'd come back. And the whole time I'm hitting trees and whooping and carrying on. And he doesn't believe in any of this Bigfoot nonsense, But anyway, I'm whooping every now and again. I never did any howls, nothing real loud, just low stuff, trying to keep it close, So we finally decide where we're going to camp for the night. I'm done at this point. I take my backpack off, and my back hurt so bad I couldn't even stand up. So he said, I'll hike down the trail and get water. You build the fire. Deal. So I make the fire, which wasn't easy because it was raining for about 4 hours at this point. But I start putting up the hammocks and everything. We're sleeping in hammocks. The rain tarps are too small for both hammocks. It was horrible. We made bunk beds with the hammocks and put the tarps together so we stayed dry for the night. So I had the fire going, and we ate and everything. When he left, I thought I heard some stuff happening. When he came back, I thought I heard some stuff happening. Wasn't sure, because it was raining. It was hard to tell. So we ate, and we're tired as can be. It's probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and we're both in the hammocks snoring away. It finally stopped raining. I have no idea what time it was, but I woke up. It wasn't raining. And I have this uncanny ability while I'm sleeping in a hammock to actually roll over onto my stomach, which is, I have no idea how I do it. Because it's hard to undo once you do it.
Well, right out.
Yeah, you would think, wouldn't you?
You would.
So anyway, I woke up. It's dark, no rain. And I'm laying on my stomach, and I hear this talking. And it's really far away, but it's talking. So I thought, well, we're only, however far we were off the Appalachian Trail. We weren't far. You only walk off so far. And so I thought, oh, it stopped raining, and we're going to see some hikers go by. We're going to see some headlamps coming soon. And the talking keeps getting louder. And then I noticed that the louder it got, the more I noticed it wasn't talking. It was, that's all I could make out of it. Just sounded like mumbling. And it kept getting louder and louder. Muttering. Yeah. Muttering. Because I think it was words, but I just couldn't make anything crisp out of it. But it keeps getting closer. I thought, and I'm actually up on my shoulders, or up on my my arms, peeking over my hammock a little bit, just like, where are these lights got to be coming soon? Who is this? Who is it? And they keep getting closer, and it keeps getting closer. I thought they got to come out soon. The moon was bright enough that I thought I was going to see them any second, because they sounded like they were 10 yards away from me.
Headlamps you thought you'd see. Right?
At least headlamps, right? Next thing I know, it was 7:30 in the morning. I woke up face down in the hammock. I was still sort of up on my shoulders, but just my face was straight down. So I don't know what happened. It's almost like it got there. I was going to see it. I was asleep. Was it the adrenaline?
Well, it could have been a combination of things. You were exhausted, of course, from your journey, right? Potentially adrenaline, because I talked about that happening to me in PA, right? When I had that individual come up to the tent and scare the crap out of me, right? I passed out soon after, but I don't know. I mean, it could have been a combination of that, or potential, what we just talked about, some infrasound. There's been talk where people have been affected by being near one of these creatures, right?
Yeah, I had some people tell me that they would like make you go to sleep.
Yeah. And I've heard that a couple of times now, actually, with a purring noise. Okay, they make a
Oh.
purring noise. Yeah, and it literally, the person who hears it is almost out immediately.
You know that, and that makes sense because the frequency that a cat purrs
Hmm.
can actually heal you.
Mm.
I read
Yeah.
that somewhere.
Well, there's a whole
So-
thing there with frequency and all the
Right.
different potential healing benefits and stuff, right? So I'm just curious, which bear burrito were you in? Were you in the top?
I was in the
bunk or
lower. I was the lower bunk. Yes. The weight limit goes down as you go up in
I
the
see.
hammock, so I am always in the bottom.
I always get a kick out of you guys in your bear burritos, though. Because you know me, when I'm out doing, I got the the 3-room condo.
Mm-hmm.
That way, I can now have a little extra room for them to press in after my initial couple of times. with the-
Right. Yeah, you can get
I
away
like
from
to-
the wall.
I can have a little space between the wall. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Except in New York, of course. I've mentioned this a couple of times now with the expedition Brian had in
Oh, when
that
it
was
came walking
September.
up on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we're hopefully going to have some audio once Brian gets through his files, right?
Right.
And once we do, I'll tell that story. Going to make it a little more interesting as we go along. Do some live, feed from the forest, right, Nathan?
Oh, I can't wait for that.
I know. You got your camera ready? Is it
I
charged?
got the camera. Oh yeah, it's charged this time. That's right. I got extra memory cards. I got 2 batteries now.
Good.
2. We're
That's
ready
the
to
key.
roll.
Extra batteries. Because you know why? Hey,
Yeah.
if there is indeed this kind of paranormal parallel, how many times have we heard crews go out, right, to do some kind of filming?
Yeah, and all the batteries are dead.
And, oh my God, my battery's dead. I just put it in.
Mm-hmm.
It happened when we were filming Finding Bigfoot, as a matter of fact. I heard
Yeah.
the camera people say this. So
Yeah.
is it the curse of Sasquatch? I don't know. But it could be something else too, So
There's an energy in the area.
mhm.
It draws everything in.
So that's pretty cool. So after that, you fell asleep, you woke up,
Yeah.
never knew what the outcome was, right?
Nope.
You guys went on your
We-
way.
We packed up. I packed up as quick as I could. I went over. I made him wait as long as he was comfortable. I was looking for footprints and stuff, but there was so much leaf litter that I wasn't gonna. It just couldn't find anything.
Did you share this with him? Did you tell him that you woke up and experienced this, or did you keep
Oh,
it to
yeah.
yourself? Okay,
Yeah, I told him what was going on.
cool. Yeah, sometimes we don't always share this type of thing, especially somebody who may be a skeptic,
Yeah. No, I know him well enough that
Yeah.
He tells me I'm crazy and I don't care.
He still likes you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. So, I mean, the AT is definitely a location where, numerous encounters have occurred.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny because we were on the AT a couple of weeks ago, if you recall, right?
That's why I brought it up. We were talking about the AT. The AT, train tracks, power lines, anywhere that creates an edge for deer to feed and things to grow that are edible, you're going to find predators.
Or just even easy access to, travel routes, I mean,
Right.
instead of having to bushwhack it, to have a path already cut through the forest makes it easier for any creature to navigate,
Sure.
But, the common thing I think with this is, why are there more, people always say, why are there more encounters along AT or other, trails that are in state forests? Right? Well, that's
because that's where the
people are. Exactly. I mean, that's like a no-brainer.
Yeah. You can't have sightings when there's no people to see it.
So what we need to do, we need to start going into, off trail, like you were just describing, where you guys were in the hammocks, right, off the trail.
Yep.
You potentially could have something pass by. I know there's been stories from the Pine Barrens where campers or, scouting troops and things like that have been set up where they hear something moving through the area, making all kinds of racket, owls and crashing through the brush and everything.
Yep.
I'd like to experience that,
Well, yeah. That always bothers me because I'm not real great with the off the trail map stuff, Never had a lot of success with that.
Hey, I mentioned in last week's podcast episode about when I held up my digital camera with my left hand and I zoomed in and I tried to take the picture right
behind you,
Squatch up on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a perfect segue for, something to talk about for this episode. So with that being said, I was going to mention my trip to British Columbia in 2009. Because again, this is one of those, encounter stories that, I could fill up a whole podcast just with BC, of course, because we had so much activity there. But I've already touched on a couple of things, like my experience with the biosolids.
Right.
So I won't go back into that. That's a really crappy story. We'll skip that part. That happened early on, though. So, but here, give you an example, right? Don't know these people at all. Just recently getting into this, few years of doing some, research, mainly in my own areas and online, but corresponding with other, researchers from around the country and also North America. So I get an invite to attend the Sunshine Coast British Columbia expedition. And I said, how can I pass up on this? So I fly out to Vancouver. I've got to get on a bus to take me to the trolley, to the ferry. It's like a real crazy journey, I'm on the ferry now going to the Sunshine Coast. I remember having to use the bathroom. Just as I'm finishing up in the bathroom, I hear the announcement saying we're docking. So I rush out. I'm like, there's nobody else around. I don't want to get left on the boat. So I'm rushing with my 2 bags of gear. And I go down the stairs to get off the boat, right? I do one of these things. on my backside. I'm sliding down with 2 bags. I hit the ground and I stand up on my feet. I look around like, did anybody see that? Meanwhile, I'm in pain. I didn't mean to do that. And I disembark and I go through, I guess, the line of people to get out of there. And I meet up with my new friend, Rob, who was picking me up at the ferry and taking me back to base camp. So, of course, when you're making a trip like that, it's good to get out a little bit earlier, right? So I did and show up at base camp. It's just he and I. And there's a camper that's, there, I guess, for the use of the participants. So it's getting dark at this point. He says, okay, that's going to be your bed. I'm going to be down in the main cabin area, okay? He says, good night, and leave the door open, he says. I'm like, what do you like? This little cot by the window, right next to the door that comes into the the camper, right? I'm like, he goes, just leave the door open. You close the screen. He said, okay. So I'm thinking to myself, this is my first time in British Columbia. I know there's big, apex. Predators here, I'm like, well, I'm not going to sleep much tonight. But after that journey, I guess I managed to pass out. And so it's funny because, like, right off the bat, there was so many cool people on this expedition that I got to meet and learn from again. So met people from all around the country, including England. We had a guy come over across the pond, as they say, from England, Charles. Wow. Really cool guy. And just every night there was something. Like the first night, all the attendees showed up. The girls went around the base camp with using their red LEDs, right? And so they get back to base camp, and no sooner than when they got back, from up on the hillside in front of me, we hear this power knock that sounded like artillery fire. Okay. Wow. And I went like this on my camera. I went, oh my God. like that, and Rob grabs the baseball bat he had leaning up on his chair, and he runs over to the knocking tree. And I was about to say, no, wait, but he was the leader. So I didn't want to step on his toes. He bangs this tree, and we didn't hear anything else from up on that hillside.
Oh, man.
Now Rob's a big guy too, but there was no way that he was nearly as big as whatever made this knock. And I'll tell you what, I went up the next day and I checked, and I did find some possible impressions on the ground of this big tree, and it looked like where something had struck the tree, and there was a branch down the ground. So again, didn't see him do it, But wow, I'll tell you what, the knocks out there on the West Coast are amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to get out there.
Totally. And so, like, that was pretty much the first night of activity. I mentioned also how we had some sticks thrown at us where you could actually see the thumbnail imprint.
Thumbnail, yeah.
Yeah, as we were discussing earlier, right? You said, hey, wouldn't be a bad thing if we were to go and actually get these things we're talking about from time to time, like you did with the
raccoon
tracks of the
tracks, yeah.
raccoons, right? It's amazing though. Like these sticks were being thrown at us as we were sitting around at base camp.
Mhm.
Now, it was a drought situation during that time period that I was there, so we weren't allowed to have campfires. So, we're all sitting around just talking and keeping our ears open for some sounds around us. And so I keep hearing something landing in between me and Katie, right? And her then boyfriend, now husband, Kirk, was to her right. And things kept landing in between us. We were about probably 3 or 4 feet apart, okay? And the weirdest thing was, like, you'd expect it to be like stones or something. But no, instead it's these sticks that were being thrown at us. And I don't know if you can make that out or not, but right on the edge.
Oh, yeah. You can
that
see it
line?
now. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And what I did the next day, see, with the shadow, you can see it better. With the lighting, sometimes, even with track impressions, depending on how the sun's shining on it, you may see it better than other times. The thing was, the next day, behind where we were sitting, there was a berm. Okay. And that actually, if you go down the hill, was where the camper was that I spent the first night with Rob. Okay. And I was able to take it back and like literally match up the sticks. Okay. Where they were broken off of this down tree.
Nice.
And that's the kind of, follow-up research that kind of gives it scientific credence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was also, as I mentioned, 2 knee impressions on this berm where you could see that something had been kneeling while they were there, snapping these things off and tossing them in to where we were sitting. And I always believe that we're their entertainment, okay? Since they don't have cable TV in the forest or, streaming services, we're their entertainment. So they were seeing what kind of rise they could get out of us, right? So meanwhile, I'm staying in this little tent because Rob was very gracious to provide me a tent. I just had to bring certain like recorders and stuff with me, okay? And my smelly boots from the biosolids incident. So I had like this orange tent that looked like a coal miner's tent, one of these like A-frame type things where it came down, right? And, and the little window in the back. Well, my campsite was on the furthest one, right by a ridge that goes down into the streams, the creek bottom. And so right through the window, it was like a sheer cliff almost going down to this creek. Every night I would leave my recorders when we got back to the base camp from whatever, we had done. I would leave my digital recorder on this stump outside of the tent. And every night I was hearing branch snaps and all kinds of different noises. It was really kind of odd afterwards. And that was, again, in the early morning hours, right? Because like we would go out to different locations. One night we went to a place, No Name Lake, okay? And this area has been famous for a 9.5 foot tall, all black colored alpha male.
Wow.
Right? So it was just me, Rob, and Neil. And we get there early before dark. We get set up. And, Rob was the one who taught me, open your bags up, open your zippers, you're not making any noises, right? Any snacks you bring, you want to open them up, have them ready. So you're not making disruptive noises, right? As you get started. I had my little notepad with me and I was taking notes, okay? We literally, no lie, I have to say though, no name lake, okay, the mosquitoes, just as dusk was coming.
They kept them carried away, were they?
It was like a cloud of mosquitoes. I mean,
that sucks.
It really did. It really did. But then, then we had a tree pushed over, right? I make a note, tree pushed over. Then this huge power knock. Boom. Another tree gets pushed over. I'm thinking to myself, oh, here we go. This is going to be good, you know. Another power knock, maybe two more. And I'm writing down the notes. Neil goes to turn on his audio recording equipment on his camera, and he goes, bloop. Nothing after that.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, that's why I'm such a stickler. When you've been out with me. Whenever we go out, I always tell everybody, hey, make sure your phones are off, your cameras are set for no bleep, your radios, right?
That's right.
I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff. In fact, I'm such a stickler on yours, I didn't even have mine on.
That's right. There's no blooping on that one.
Nope. Anyway, so, this is exciting for me. And I'm thinking this is going to be great. But then after his camera equipment made that noise, that was it. And we tried doing, what do they call that? Call blasting, right? With big speakers on top of Neil's vehicle. I walked down this forest road that was just tree lined by huge, evergreens. I mean, giant. It was like pitch black. I'm down there by myself. Rob and Neil are back at the base camp we had set up, and we're doing some back and forth provocations, doing some wood knocks with like a blast block. And then I'm thinking to myself, it's like I literally couldn't see my hand in front of my face, I'm thinking to myself, man, somebody could snatch me up right now and nobody would ever know where I went. I was just, and this is a 9.5 foot tall Bigfoot, okay? Sasquatch. No problem picking me up, and putting me under his arm and taking me home, or wherever.
He
so
will pet
I got a little feared up, with the hair on the back of your neck kind of thing. So not long after that, I returned to where those other guys were. And again, we didn't have much happen after that. Nothing really. That was really a bummer because I was expecting to have that in my face, encounter that night. I really was. But I left one thing out. The night before, two teams, me and Rob and Katie Kirk, went to another location, right? And so the idea was we're going to do like a Pied Piper kind of thing where they went in first up the trail and then onto the ridge, right, above. And then Rob and I were going to wait 10 minutes and then go in after them. Well, somehow, after waiting the 10 minutes, Rob and I wound up going on the trail to the right, which took us down below the ridge into the ravine, okay? And again, no headlamps. Rob's very big on no headlamps, not even red LEDs, okay?
Yeah.
And this is really the first official night, I guess you could say, right? I'm out with him, and I can't see my hand in front of my face. Again, we're walking on a trail. I'm just keeping like pace with him, knowing where to step, basically, right? And again, same kind of feeling, like anything can grab me. Nobody would even know. He wouldn't never notice like something that quick because, there's reports of how quick they can be.
Right.
Could not see my hand in front of my face. It was so dark, okay? And we wound up being below Katie and Kirk, right? The funniest thing was they were getting rocks thrown at them because they were up at this area where there's a picnic table and a bench, We're down below just on a trail and maintaining radio contact, right? So Rob and I are down below, and Katie and Kirk are having rocks thrown at them, and we're like, "Oh crap! Can we be up there?"
Right.
So Rob, you made the wrong turn. So, it was again one of those kind of occasions. Unbelievable countryside, though. I mean, every day it was a heat wave, so it was like 100 degrees every day. So every day we would go to Ruby Lake and take a dip in this crystal clear, pristine water. Beautiful. A lot of fun stuff happens on expeditions. There's a lot of good times, a lot of funny occasions. I'll finish it off with this. The last day, everybody, how everybody says their goodbyes, pack up base camp and everything. Well, I wasn't leaving till the following day, so I was hanging out in DC another day with Rob and his wife Debbie. So everybody had gone. I was down in the creek bottom by the waterfall, which was dried up because of the drought. And I was on a downed tree, and I was just sitting there and I said my affirmations and my prayers. And I look up, and up on the hillside in front of me is the head and shoulders of an auburn-colored individual. And I went, that wasn't there a moment ago. So I had the camera, right? Raised it up, zoomed in, left-handed, took a picture, spun around. I said, somebody said, oh, you take pictures behind you to get them walking away, right? Took a couple of pictures of nice bushes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Came back around, and it was gone.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, man. But I did think further up by this giant evergreen tree, spruce, whatever it was, I did think I saw another one that was all dark black hair covered, okay?
Yeah.
But I couldn't say for sure. But it appeared to be another one up there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And from this hillside, every night we were having all kinds of noises and, you know, whoops and different sounds. So it was gone. So I took another picture, right? Went up the hillside back to the base camp. And I said to Rob, I said, I think I just saw a Sasquatch. And he looks at me and says, okay. Took my SD card out, put it in his laptop, and we did a side-by-side comparison. He says, yeah, I think you saw a Sasquatch. So again,
now you're gonna have to get those pictures.
Oh, I have the pictures. I have them. They're on, they're on my Facebook page. It's just, it's blurry, you know.
Yeah.
You can see the eye sockets. You can see there's no hair here. You know what I mean? And the reddish colored fur behind the rocks and the branches of the trees and stuff that were up on the hillside. And the follow up one, it's not there. You know? And up on that hillside, I found a 20-inch track. Okay.
Wow.
20-inch. Yeah, it was big. Not worth casting though because of how it was in the soil. But there was a game trail around the whole ridge, and there were root balls strategically positioned where one could sit behind the root ball and observe us in base camp. You know?
Really?
Oh yeah. So I think they're highly intelligent, and that too, you know, that area has a long history of native peoples, right, and a lot of interactions with these creatures over the time. So it was a great trip. I highly recommend it.
Highly recommended.
One of my favorite places.
Well, that's going on the bucket list.
Oh yeah,
we have to get out there. We have to do an episode from BC. How's that?
No doubt. That's definitely. I mean, the whole northwestern, you know, what do they call it? Pacific Northwest, right? And so I want another shot at going by Bluff Creek and you know, all that area, because the first time I did it following the Grateful Dead, it was not with Bigfoot in mind. So the only time I thought about Bigfoot was when I was horseback riding in the redwoods, and there was toilet paper strewn all around this outhouse, and I thought, oh, I'm not saying it was Bigfoot, but it was Bigfoot.
That's right. I'm not saying it was Bigfoot. But...
So, hey, those are a couple of tales. I don't know if people find that kind of stuff interesting or not, but we sure did.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's the more you're out there, the more stories you have, and we keep going out. So we're just going to keep getting better stories.
We got a bunch, and those are old stories.
Yeah.
You know? Those are stories from when I really knew nothing. You know, now we know just enough to get in trouble, of course.
Right. Exactly. A lot of trouble.
But hey, as a result, I get to meet people like yourself and Brian and Art and Kevin. You know what I mean? So, well, hey, I don't know. I mean, I miss Brian not being here, but you know, this was kind of comfortable and went smoothly. Hopefully, we can get this up and let the viewers enjoy it real soon. So remember to give us a like, right? Yeah,
like, share, subscribe. That's right.
In unison. Say it together. Subscribe. But no, we do appreciate all your support and for helping us grow the channel. I mean, this has been a lot of fun so far, so we're going to keep it going, and hopefully you'll keep tuning in. So thanks for watching.
Night, everybody.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Squatch Talks Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and give us a like, and stay tuned for more exciting stories on Squatch Talks.